All right, we should be live. I believe we are. Let me make sure that's the case. I think so. All right. Thanks, guys, for joining us today on this amazing discussion about timekeeping. I'm Harmony Ginger, and I am here with Night Danger, Scudder for Mike, and Dunder Moose. If you guys want to introduce yourself.
You know, Dunder, I thought for sure you were going to wear a Santa cap today. I don't know why. I was like, I bet Dunder's going to have one and it's going to be ready to go.
Like a
Hi, everybody.
Santa cap.
I'm Scudder for Mike. You can find me at YouTube, Scudder_Mike. I do solo plays, talk about old school kind of games, and I often talk about one-to-one time.
Heck yeah. Night Danger, tell them who you are, bro.
I'm Night Danger. The most intelligent Canadian alive, and I'm here on YouTube at Night Danger RPG, and I'm on Twitter at I think with Night Danger, and I don't have any cool or interesting projects happening. I just kind of scream into the internet.
Right on, man.
And I was gonna wear a Santa hat today. I was gonna. Because I was
one?
like, you know what, I'm a little bit feral looking. I need a haircut, and then I opted not to because I thought, you know what,
I have a trilby. However, I just don't feel atheist enough to wear it. So
well, and it blends into the black background you've got going.
Yes.
Yeah.
But are you okay, Harmony?
Yeah. My cat unplugged my monitor as soon as we went live, and I had to do a.
They're plotting against us.
The cat gremlin.
So sorry.
Oh, no worries. My name is Dunder Moose. You guys are probably sick of me. This is like my third time being on YouTube this week. We covered on my channel. We covered a Bronstein called Bros Are Diceless. And then Tabletop Family was good enough to invite me on. So I had like a huge 3-hour interview with him yesterday. So I might be all out of words. We'll see. It's hard for that to happen. But if you want to get more Dunder, if you just don't have enough Dunder in your life, look up on X, I'm Dunder Moose. And on YouTube, I think I'm still just Dunder Moose. So look for all the Dunder Mooses.
Who is
find me?
Moose?
How is Dunder Moose?
Whomst.
Some would even say, why is Dunder Moose?
That's the real question.
I have been asking myself that for a while. Anyway, we kind of wanted to talk about timekeeping for a while. I'm sorry. Did everyone introduce themselves? Because I was plugging in my monitor.
Yeah, no, we're all
we
live.
Crushed it. It was so good.
All right. So I kind of wanted to start about talking about how we've evolved timekeeping in our games, because I know all four of us run games, right?
Yes.
I'm not wrong in saying that. Yeah, we've all run games for a while. And I want to talk about how that's evolved and what sort of timekeeping did you guys use in your games when you started? Did you guys start with pause time, or how did you start? Okay.
Well, I didn't know that there was a term for pause time or one-to-one. Like when I started, I just thought I was doing what everybody did, and that's you play the game while you're playing the game, and then when everyone has to go home for the night, you just freeze the game world in a crystal, and then it's just on the DM to remember, if you're lucky enough to have a session, in working memory before, months go by, you have another session, and then you've got to catch everybody. Okay, here's what we were halfway through the Sunless Citadel. You had made a deal with the Kobold Queen to go get their dragon. The goblins are causing you problems. So-and-so was here. He's not here. You just wandered into a dungeon and caught up with him for some reason because you weren't here last time, but you're here this time. And
wait, what is that right? Or was Meepo? Did Meepo steal the golden? Wait, that
exactly right.
Yeah, that happened a lot.
Was Meepo our guide, or did everyone just stab him while he was still rolled up in the carpet?
Right. Yeah. So I think that for me, I prided myself on watching all sorts of D&D YouTube. Okay.
Yeah.
And the the top brains on YouTube, they all said, you know, when you're about to end the session, you want to leave it on a cliffhanger. They're about to open the door. They hear screaming from the other side, and then we'll find out what happens next time. And then there never is a next time. Or it's
Now,
been
hold
2
on a
months
second.
since the next time.
I counter that statement actually, and I
What
think
do you got?
I've decided. So today I'm going to be a little bit of a devil's advocate, and I'm gonna shill for a little bit of pause time under certain circumstances, which is of course going to make all of my wonderful Brosar buddies angry with me.
I haven't bullied
and
anyone.
They're going to call me nasty names, and it's going to be great. But the accusation when I first encountered the Brosar and Jeffro, I didn't, the rhetoric didn't impact me in the slightest, and I wasn't interested at all because I had never experienced the problem. I didn't have the problem of trying to get the same group together for successive sessions. When I started running D&D after playing in a second ed campaign in high school, when I started running 5th edition, we ran every week for like 2 years straight. We had it was very, very consistent. I just and I was there were certain things that made that possible, namely I formed it with a group of guys who all of us were entering into either college or careers, and none of us had moved away, so we were all still local. We knew each other. The social cohesion was there, which I think we've talked about on a previous episode, is the importance of social cohesion. But probably the biggest thing was just that I was a jerk about attendance, which is that if you weren't there, your character was getting NPC'd, and if he died, that was it's bad luck. And so
that was your solution to the not showing up problem.
That was my solution to, like, if someone has an off week or they're missing it, and like sometimes it just works.
We're gonna weekend at Bernie's, just walk their cold corpse around the dungeon.
Well, or just entrust another player. Like, hey, can you run Johnny's halfling for him because he's not here.
But they never role play. Like, it's like the character in terms of the game fiction, the character just goes wordless. Like they just become this cruel, dumb murder machine.
The only time it matters, right, is in combat, right? And so it worked out all right. And I will say that was for all the problems I have with 5th edition, and for all the problems I have with conventional play style, that was the longest game I ever ran. We ran for like a year and a half every single week.
Right.
So that was like the long. And I'm not sure what alchemy made that work, because we haven't been able to recreate a campaign that long since.
I had a similar experience when I first started dungeon mastering. I was doing 5th edition, and we did, my real life friends, we did the Tiamat campaign all the way through. It took us 10 months, and we met about 3 times a month. And then after that, we did the Curse of Strahd, which took us about 7 or 8 months, and we about 4 times a month at that point. And then when we got to the Out of the Abyss campaign, which was also awesome, that took us a year, and we met every week at that point.
Wow.
It was great. Yeah.
Real quick, I want to interrupt you guys. We got a super chat from Joel Peterson. He just wants to say he loves us and he's happy to see us hanging out. Thank you so much, Joel. I really appreciate that. And
Another
also,
Canadian.
Oh, what? Oh, well, you had to ruin it.
We're everywhere.
And also, my ear trumpet has been struck by lightning. Also, as a super chat, he says, I thought I would stir the pot and say I like stop time. And thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys for the chats. Joel, you guys should also subscribe to Joel's channel. He's the dude's brilliant, and he may just be the second smartest Canadian behind Night Danger.
Oh, he's good. Yeah, I've already said to Joel.
He's a lovely guy.
I'm sorry. All right, please go on.
And so for about 2.5, almost 3 years, we were playing really consistently. And then we started marrying off and having kids. And at that point, we could never quite recover. And so we were trying to get a game off the ground. it would go a month or two before we could get to the next session. And then it got to a point where I don't even get to play with my real life friends anymore, because just life has taken over. And so I was looking for alternatives, like how can I keep a game going week after week and not see this inconsistency or this drop off?
I want to blow your guys' mind and tell you about my evolution with timekeeping now.
Do it.
My first campaign I ever ran, I didn't know anything about the Bro SR. I didn't know anything about you guys. I didn't watch RPGs on YouTube. My only experience was I played with my friends. And I decided to run a campaign that was going to be completely homebrew. And I actually based it off of the 12 Labors of Heracles. It was very railroady, but I mean, I was brand new. And it was several years ago. And I remember on the second session, they were like, okay, so this is just the next day. And I was like, no, that's silly. You can't just have an adventure like day after day. It's been like a week because we'll just do it in real time. It's been like a week. And they're like, what? People don't do that.
What's up?
They're like, Harmony, people don't do that. It's like the next day. What do we do all week? And I was like, I don't know. Just you like guys like just relaxed and stuff. And they were like,
oh my gosh.
I don't think people run campaigns like that. Now, I will admit I had not read the DMG at that point because I just started running
didn't
the
need
game.
to. Harmony, you were the chosen one.
And so
everyone plays stop time the first time. Everyone, and then you just jump over the building like Neo in the Matrix, and you're the one.
I was like, you guys just did like a whole like Herculean. You guys just did a big task yesterday. You can't just do the same thing day after day. Like that doesn't make sense. And the group was like, no, Harmony, people don't do that.
Oh,
so I was like, okay. And then I ran stop time for like a decade.
Oh no, you were so close. You had it. And they were like, actually, you're supposed
the door opened for you want to read that, Harmony?
Yeah. The Ultra American TTRPGer, thank you so much. He says, my talk with Mike is still one of my favorites.
Mike did crush that show, and he picked it up off the ground after you stopped to drink a big Kool-Aid bottle.
He did. So I was still with 5th edition whenever I started asking these questions about how to like maintain player consistency. And I found MCDM. They had a book. It's called like Downtime or what was it? It was like Castles and oh, nice. Yeah. So they had like some kind of feature where like you needed to use your downtime to build your keep. And it was like, you need 3 months to build your keep. And I was like, okay, so there's going to be this activity where, like you're playing the game at your session and you're fighting monsters, but then there's things that you're going to do away from the table. And he made a video about it as well, where he's like, I played one-on-one with my players in between the sessions. Like, this is what they're doing. And I was like, well, how does that match up? Because if you are in the dungeon and the door's about to open, but they're going on these little solo adventures, how are they doing that? And so I started like putting the pieces together, and I wasn't using 1-to-1 time, but I was using like a calendar at that point. So I had actually started like tracking time. And so like that was just step one.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point, because I think it's important to note that when we talk about timekeeping, that doesn't necessarily mean 1-to-1 timekeeping. You can have timekeeping without going like based on the real life calendar. Which I think Gary Gygax said in the AD&D DMG in all caps on like, I can't remember what chapter, somewhere near the beginning, actually, I think. He said you cannot
must be kept.
Yes, that one. You cannot have a meaningful
to page 37, the right-hand column, right here. I don't know if that's going to go in.
I can see it. Yeah, you cannot have a meaningful campaign if strict time records are not kept.
And then he has an example, and look at the underlined section.
It's a little,
and it is
best grainy there.
To use 1 actual day equals 1 game day when no play is happening. I was reading it. I don't
Oh,
know what it
why?
looks like on YouTube, but like that was totally mirrored. So I was like trying to read it backwards. That's why I sounded illiterate for a minute.
Reading is hard. But why does he think that using one game day equals one actual play when no play is happening? Why do you think he thinks that is?
So I would say a tipping point for that's a good little joke in the chat there. 2-2 time is superior.
It has to be. It's twice as good.
Necessarily, which stands to reason that, of course, that 7-7 time is, of course, seven times as good.
Will runs 13 to 41 times.
7 to 7 times.
So I would say a forerunner to me starting to think about and then eventually try adopting the 1-to-1 time and the strict timekeeping is after I'd been running the game for about 2 years, and a friend of mine was still running his second ed campaign more infrequently. Like they were getting together maybe once every month and a half, 2 months. But they would get together on a Saturday for like 11 hours. So it was like big, huge chunks of gameplay less frequently. And it was around that time that we just played Diplomacy for the first time. We discovered the board game Diplomacy, and we started playing it. And it very quickly took over our personalities. We thought it was the greatest thing ever. Everyone was talking about ways we could play Diplomacy, and like, oh, we should do a play-by-post group as like a circle, just like casually in the background. And what my friend who was running second edition, he thought, what if I used like Diplomacy to like run the factions of my game world? So like he handed me a page about the orcs, and another one of my buddies like, oh, you're the lord of this castle here, and it just never took off. Because how do you adjudicate how much time the factions have to engage in moves, and how do you allow for, and that in relation to the adventuring party, that is do you still have like a mono party get along gang, and then you have all these factions that he wanted to run using Diplomacy, but how do you determine time? Like how do you keep track of all those moving parts and keep everything synced up and fair? How do you have a fair game with multiple independent actors operating under a fog of war? How do you do that? And we had no idea, and so the idea fizzled out and never happened. And so like I look back on that and I'm like, oh, but what could have been? We could have had it. We could have had that game work that way if we had known to just sync the calendar.
So one of the big arguments against 1-to-1 time that I've run into, and there's a few of them, but one of them
Can we define 1-to-1 real quick, just so
one game day equals
that's kind of where I'm headed.
Real day.
Yeah,
that's kind of where I'm headed with this. They say nobody ever played that way. Where are you getting this from? So I'm gonna kind of walk you through where this stuff comes from, as far as I can tell, and show you examples both from D&D, AD&D, and other games from around there, as well as a few. Well, I think I've got my. Hang on, just a second.
Well,
I don't think he has it.
No.
I've got my I've got the Dungeons of Dread, S1 and S1 through S4, right? So just to put to bed that, hey, this is a weird thing you guys came up with, and that nobody ever did it this way. So the first place you see it, this is the third little brown book. I colored it myself. I bought the PDF and printed it. This isn't I didn't do this to an original.
That's how I got my my copy of Traveler.
Okay. This is the third volume, The Underworld and Wilderness Adventures, and it begins, the section that I'm referring to begins on page 35 at the bottom, and it says, and I quote, time, as the campaign goes into full swing, it is probable that there will be various groups going every which way, and all at different time periods. It is suggested that a record of each player be kept, the referee checking off each week as it is spent. Reckon the passage of time thus. And then turning the page, we get a little table here at the top. I don't know if I can get my stinking thing to focus. I'll read it if it doesn't focus. Dungeon expedition, 1 week. Wilderness adventure, 1 move equals 1 day. And 1 week of actual time is 1 week of game time. The time for the dungeon adventures considers only preparations and a typical 1-day descent into the pits. The time for wilderness expeditions would include days of rest and recuperation. Actual time would not be counted off for players out on a wilderness adventure, but it would for those nude in their dens, hide holes, keeps, castles, etc., as well as for those in the throes of some expedition in the underworld. Right? So here is your, I don't know if I can.
Oh no. I just had you big. There we go.
There we go.
That is
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the original Brown Book Dungeons and Dragons. And the very last page of the very last volume talks about 1-to-1 time. We already talked about page 37. I already showed you that. So Gary carried that on in a D&D first edition. And he ups it not from 1 week equals 1 week in the game time, but he says it's best for 1 day to equal 1 day when no play is happening. In a session, you can continue to do like you normally would and go through a long journey in a few moments, doing a few reaction rolls. There are times, especially if you listen to Alchemic Raker lately, there are times in the dungeon where it does kind of zoom back into that moment by moment where everything that is said at the table can be overheard by the monsters in the thing. Getting into that constant role-playing stuff. But
hold up, I was told immersion isn't real.
The next thing I wanted to jump to is the Tomb of Horrors, the infamous Tomb of Horrors. And in the intro, notes for the Dungeon Master. The second paragraph says, negotiation of the tomb will require quite a long time, so be prepared to spend several sessions with this module. When the game ends for the day, assume the expedition is spending the intervening time until play again commences resting and recovering from adventuring up to that point. Allowing actual game days on a 1-to-1 basis gives players a chance to recover some lost hit points too. So that's in the first one. The second one mentions, it doesn't exactly call out 1-to-1 time exactly, but White Plume Mountain. And I've put screenshots of these on my Twitter if you follow along. White Plume Mountain also in notes for the Dungeon Master. Sorry, I can't find that one right now. But can I share something, Harmony? I'm just gonna get through this and I'll let you guys have your speech, have your time.
Sorry.
Laughing at comments.
I've thought about it.
So I don't know. Can you guys? You're gonna have to pull it up onto the screen, Harmony.
I didn't even notice. Where?
So
just to be clear, guys, it's Sunday where I live. It's Sunday. It's not.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
So yeah, and I'm totally ignoring the chat right now. I'm sure you guys are tearing me up a treat. But here is from RuneQuest, first edition, page 18. Time. The reader will find the following terms defining time throughout the rules of RuneQuest. Game week. This describes passage of time for the character in the world of Glorantha. Training, rune magic, and other considerations are all based on the game week. How long is a game week in real time? A time scale of 1 real week per game week makes the game drag, unless one is attempting to run a campaign by mail. The authors recommend a scale of 1 real day equaling one game week. It simplifies bookkeeping and lets players keep characters in play fairly continuously. However, this can be adjusted to fit the type of campaign being played. So they're not arguing for 1-to-1 as Gary did, but they are very much in that tradition saying, okay, this is better. But it's assumed that this is how it's being played. Is that not enough for you? Okay, well, here's Chivalry and Sorcery, first edition on page 2. The time frame of Chivalry and Sorcery as a game is different from other games of its general type. Which ones could they mean? For the 1 day equals 1 game day concept has been dropped in favor of a more telescoped time period. The recommended time period for individual adventure campaigns is roughly on a 1-to-4 basis, with 1 real week equal to 1 game month. And that's how Blackwall does it for Horde Wars Basic and the upcoming Horde Wars Advanced. And I got one more for you, just in case you guys think, well, yeah, so original Dungeons and Dragons and AD&D and Chivalry and Sorcery and RuneQuest, but that's not enough, man. Well, guess what? Here in the Fantasy Trip, in the Labyrinth, page 31, if you play each adventure for its own sake, starting new characters and entering new territory, you don't need to worry about time. However, most people prefer to play a campaign. Well, what's a campaign? There may be as many as 15 or 20 people in a campaign. Each will have several characters. What? Each has more than one character? It's not the
Why
mono
would they
party
need
spotlight?
that?
Exactly. At any one time, some characters are resting from their wounds, others are at work on magical items or potions, others are working at their jobs to earn money, and others are out adventuring. A campaign can last for months or years with game sessions every week or so, real time that is. If a GM wants to run a real campaign, he will need to keep track of time in the real world or in the game world. It is possible to have a totally flexible time system. The players decide between themselves each time they get together to play how much time has passed. The alternative is to have a fixed scale. For instance, 1 day in the real world equals 1 week of game time, or 1 week in the real world equals 2 weeks of game time. Pick one that suits your convenience. Knowing how much time has passed in the game lets you keep track of healing wounds, money earned from jobs, time taken to travel, and much more. So, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that now.
Okay.
Or
so what
whatever.
you're saying
but so
is,
you guys get the point I'm trying to make. That you
so what you're
cannot
saying is
say,
that we never said that nobody ever played that way. We said we've always played that way. Jeffro and the Bros did not discover anything new. We've always played that way.
well,
See?
we didn't need Jeffro because we had Harmony. If she hadn't been shut down so brutally right at the front. But my point is, of all of the objections that we may encounter with our devil's advocacy, hopefully I have somewhat put to bed for you the idea that nobody ever considered this, that nobody ever ran it that way.
Yeah, we always played that way.
And if that doesn't convince you, then nothing I say will.
So
Well,
why 1-to-1 as opposed to, let's say, other strict timekeeping?
So I want to say a few things about this actually.
Yeah.
First of all, I like 1-to-1. I cannot say I have ever experimented with 1-4 or 1-7 or 14-300 or whatever other ratios. I've experimented with pause time and 1-to-1 time, and pause time with downtime stretches, right? Those are really the only ones. However, I like 1-to-1 because everyone gets it. Players don't need to ask questions. They don't have to ask like, hey, Harmony, what day is it in game again? Or how much time has passed since I was here 3 weeks ago or anything like that. They just know. Easy. That's why I like it.
It's
also
the easiest form of timekeeping.
Man, I wish I had like set this up like you had, but I remember the first time I encountered someone else doing 1-to-1 or someone doing 1-to-1 was when I was reading old modules, because my level of literacy is I like to read old modules, but not core books for some reason. Sometimes like I don't need to know the system. I just want to use the dungeon. But I remember there was one I read that was like, I want to say it was Castle Amber. Might have been Castle Amber.
Yeah.
But it said like basically when the players aren't playing, there's this like mist that like raises them into the air and protects them and makes sure they are well nourished and have plenty of water and are totally good to go and stuff exactly as they were from last time. And I was like, why would you need that? Like, just pause.
Yeah, you won't need that if you pause the time.
Yeah. That's so weird. Like, and I remember my original thought was like, I played like that, or I tried to play like that once, but it's kind of silly to do it like that. Like, why not just, it's easy to just pause the game. Why do you need to have like this mist that rises people up into the air and keeps them well nourished for a week? Like, why?
Because
Silly.
video games invented pause time.
Yeah.
Gygax was writing pre-video game.
So whenever I'm running a pause time game, and I'm currently doing one right now, sort of, with Shadow Dark, I'm running a mini campaign while my players are like traveling overseas. And so it's really fun. It's a narrative game. Like, you get to tell a story, and the players will kind of like follow along because they're pretty, they're pretty cooperative, and it's really cool. But one of the guys at my table for the Shadow Dart game, he's also a player in my 1-to-1 time game, and he has no other gaming experience. And so this is his first time playing in a stop time game. And we turned over to the carousing page in Shadow Dark. We rolled the results, and I gave them way too much treasure, so they had like a lot of downtime. And so he's like, okay, so for my downtime, I want to do this, this, this. And I was like, no, man, sorry, that's not really what we do with this kind of game. And he looked at me, he's like, okay, yeah, all right. And I could tell he was like, well, something's missing now. And that's what's great about new players. Like, teach new players the right way. And the only time you need to correct the bad behaviors is when you're the one forcing it on them.
Yeah, my Godstein campaign has 12 players, and I have one guy in it who's actually fairly new to the game. He just came in maybe, I don't know, a couple months ago, and I didn't even explain it to him. I was just like, all right, yeah, a week passes, it's like real time. And he's like, oh yeah, okay. Like, it's like, okay, you don't have any questions about that? No, simple.
Yeah, just easy to understand.
Yeah.
What day is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, easy.
It is
So I
handy
see it-
also from a weather perspective. If you're ever when I was doing the second Braunstein in my the campaign I ran over the summer, the Druid faction, the faction of people living in the swamp with a priest caste of druids, were very, very invested in what the weather was like, because if it's cloudy or rainy, then they can cast Call Lightning, which is a horrifying, broken, terrible spell in in first edition. It's absolutely brutal, and I think Gary wrote it under the assumption of Wisconsin weather, where you would regularly have, like, not only is it a clear day, there is not a single cloud for like 180 miles from my location. Because we were running it in a kind of South America, and so I was just 1-to-1 weathered. I pulled up the weather app and I set my location to Yucatan, Mexico. And so when the player said to me, "Hey, what's the weather like this week?" I just pull up my phone and showed him. I'm like, this is the weather. The weather is directly correlated with reality. But it of course meant that a druid in the Yucatan can basically cast Call Lightning every single day.
Yeah,
My buddy
players
Mo
said I'm
and-
not allowed. Oh, go ahead.
My buddy Mo in the comments, he was talking about how he's used Call of Cthulhu in 1-to-1, and he would research newspapers back from the 20s and use that information. The only issue, Mo, with Call of Cthulhu at 1-to-1 is some of those downtime activities, like reading those arcane tomes, is like 2 years. And so say goodbye to that character.
Play by post campaign, right? Like,
Roll up an alt.
Yeah. So yeah, say goodbye to that character. You might see them again, when your child is in primary school.
Just in the library. How's it going? Still reading.
Still
As
reading.
of
just working on my thesis.
Yeah.
as of last month, when Hurricane Milton hit, I'm no longer allowed to use real life weather. So
Oh man, that would have been amazing.
yeah. Brad had a really good comment here. Timekeeping makes sense when you compare it to Animal Crossing and other games that have that sort of thing. I hadn't actually thought to compare it to Animal Crossing, but I'm a girl, so I get the comparison 100%. So
Yeah, it's a little different. I love Animal Crossing. I play it a lot. Animal Crossing is closer to Shadow Dark because it's actual time at the table.
That's true.
Where like we use 1-to-1 when there's no play. You use 1-to-1 when there is play with Shadow Dark and with Animal Crossing.
So I want to do something here. I want to talk about like why 1-to-1 time sucks.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
worst parts about it. Because I mean, I think it's like we're all sitting here gushing about why it has revolutionized our games and made it better, but I think there are like real downsides to it. And there are two I can think of that have actually been a thorn in my side a little bit. But one of them is the fact that using 1-to-1 time incentivizes your players. I had a huge problems with this, but like it for a while was incentivizing people to bug me all the time when we weren't playing. like, hey, can I do this during my downtime? I want to do this during my downtime. Okay, so I'm going to read this. I'm going to go research this. I should have a couple days to hang out at the bar, and I want to go see if I can find any cool locations nearby. And yeah, so that's one of them. It incentivizes at least if you don't put your foot down, it incentivizes players to bug you constantly. And second is Black Lodge Games is hitting it is homework. Homework is not fun, and it can add homework if the players aren't adjudicating the downtime by themselves. Like for a lot of things, I've kind of taught the players, like, this is how you adjudicate this downtime activity. Like if you're going to go to the fighting pits, this is what you roll for it. This is what you need. And just here, roll a D10, tell me if there's complications, and then I'll come in. Right. And that's kind of,
have you,
oh my God.
Holy crap. Get that one up.
J-Mac, are you serious? I hate just getting on here, but I find the conversation surrounding timekeeping to be fascinating and have been interested in trying one-to-one time myself. Love learning new forms of play. Thank you so much, J-Mac. Oh,
rock on, man.
Hopefully that wasn't an accidental extra zero.
You just paid
that
for
guy's
like
cool, man.
a month and a half of StreamYard.
Yeah.
Oh. I'm sorry. Wow. I'm taking now. I've never. That's like.
That's
wow. Thank you.
Wow. Really cool.
Well, you absorb that. And thanks a lot, J-Mac. Have you tried ignoring your players?
Yes. So there's a good segue here. I'll preface my criticisms of one-to-one with one last praise of it, so that people know I'm on the right side of history. There is a what's the word I'm looking for? I ran a campaign starting in like I think March, maybe late February this year, and it ended like first week of September. We ran almost every week on sometimes a couple times a week, where we run in person and online for just my guys here in real life, and we used one-to-one time, and I gave them all factions, and it was without a doubt the most fun and exciting gaming that I have ever played in my entire life. It was excellent. It was also like 15 to 20 hours of work for me per week to run. And I was able to do it because I was finishing up my undergrad, and I had an extremely flexible schedule and could do things like adjudicate downtime while listening to lecture recordings. I received very generous grants from the Canadian government to pursue my studies, which meant that I only had to work part-time. And yeah, so it was possible because of the circumstances of me having enough time to dedicate 15 to 20 hours outside of playtime per week to running this campaign. Good, actually interesting patron and faction downtime orders are a lot of work. It is a lot of homework. Black Lodge is completely right on that. It is like I would get 1 to 3 pages of annotated bullet notes. Actually, you know what? If somebody, I can return to this. If somebody wants to express some ideas, I'm going to pull up.
I will express
one of
something
my orders sheets.
While you're getting that, here's what I'd say. In the BroSR, we have a rule about character backstory, and that is 1 push-up per word. So that might be a good rule for your downtime orders as well. Say, you want to send
my
me
players send me videos of push-ups all the time.
Yeah, you need to do a push-up or a pull-up, maybe like 1 pull-up per sentence on the downtime orders. Because
some of my players might be in the chat right now.
To me, one-to-one should be trying to solve problems and make it easier, not make it harder. And when the bros were first figuring out this Bronstein stuff, when we were doing what the Broser manual calls a method 3, which is the always on massively multiplayer game, it was eating DMs for breakfast. The guys that knew what they were doing burned out after a month. The guys that didn't know what they were doing burned out after a couple of weeks. It was what needed to be fixed when we went back to the session Bronstein or the battle Bronstein. And so like the one night session that plays like a diplomacy game, we still had the lightning in a bottle and it didn't eat the DM. The play by post weekly, like the Traveler Stein and that kind of stuff, it still has people just glued to their phone. They can't wait to hear what happened. Is Dunder gonna shoot me in this, all-terrain vehicle? You still have the good stuff, but it has to work in a way that works for the game. And so, yeah, if you become an order taker as a DM, if you immediately respond to every message that your players send you, it sends the message that they can do that and expect that.
Yeah, they're
so like if you just
signaling to them that it's
say,
okay.
I'm at church. I'm not going to read this crap written by you right now. When I get out, when I get a moment, when my family's all fed and everyone's on their own screens and I'm no longer needed, then I'm going to respond to this stuff.
Yeah.
You set the cadence as a DM, but it's going to take some leadership because
you
might be just as excited as they are. Right?
So this is what we did: is I had a basic schedule of orders for your faction are due on Wednesday.
Yeah,
and they take effect on Wednesday at dawn, and the new orders are due Wednesday at dawn, right? So you have like new order, like thing. It goes to end. Like you post Wednesday at dawn, it's due, and that's going to cover everything until the next Wednesday at dawn. And I would give people what I call the weather report, an update on how their orders were going. It wouldn't give everything because sometimes there's still a couple days between when they receive their weather report and when the next round of orders is due. But usually on a Saturday, I would sit down and I would, after thinking about and like reading everyone's orders and kind of making sure I was connecting all the dots, because a big part of it is taking all this disparate data and collating it into something cohesive that overlaps and forms convergence. So here I've got one of the order documents that I received from a player pulled up here. So I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Yeah, there. You see it?
Maybe you might want to zoom in.
Oh, here we
just a
go.
bit.
Oh yeah. Let's zoom in there. Oh wait, no, that's
after
font
this.
size.
Let's bring up young Steve. If that's one of the black, is that the BLG young Steve or is that another?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because he brought out an interesting point. Yeah.
So what we've got here, this is his overview. We have his overview of like details about the faction, notable NPCs, how many soldiers they have, locations on the map, resources, and then finally we get into this is 1 week of orders. And each one of these things it's like, I have some eagles, I'm going to use them to scout for 3 hexes around the swamp, and I'm going to do some druids are going to be casting stone shape. Here's the calculator box of spells used, like befriend animal is being attempted as many as 28 times a day.
Yeah.
All of this stuff, right?
No.
Okay, so just wait here. Just bear with me. I'm going to stop sharing because you just see the madness.
Yeah.
This is a lot. And Jeffro and B-Dubs are right to say, no, absolutely not. Oh, I'm out of focus here. What's going on?
Sometimes you just got to scream nerd at your players.
Here's the tricky thing, is that level of detail is very, very, you get what you pay for with RPGs. That level of detail is annoying to adjudicate, especially if you have a very finite amount of time to dedicate to it. But if you have the time to dedicate to it, getting those kinds of orders from 7 different factions every week, who were all hated each other,
that's fun.
Meant that I was getting overlaps and convergences from this kind of really hyper dweebish, pencil pushing, Poindexter order structure. This meant that like almost every week some faction leader was getting some news that something went real wrong and he doesn't know who's responsible, but it's not good. And it was any given week, the play when we'd go to play at the adventurer level, right, with the party of adventurers hanging out in town looking to go plumb some dungeons, I'd say, what do you guys want to do this week? And they'd say, oh, well, what's any interesting rumors? And I would have a list of like 15, like all kinds of interesting stuff going on. It was phenomenal. It was great gaming. It's the downside of it is that it's just an insane amount of work.
Is it worth it?
I would,
if you honestly, have the time, it's so worth it. I would unequivocally, like, if you're in high school, like if you're a teenager and you have like hours, like I remember when I was in high school, when we'd get together to play D&D, we would play for like 10 hours on a Sunday afternoon and be messaging people all the time and like writing emails and like if you have a lot of free time, then yeah, it's totally worth it. If you have obligations and responsibilities and children and work and that level of investment is hard to pull off. And what we found as a party when I finished my undergrad and I suddenly did not have time to run a game of that level of intensity is that trying to go back and do the yeah, that's probably fair, Joel. It's yeah, if
you're in the low sodium soup aisle.
Yeah. If you, when we tried to go back to it, there was a bit of a banished from the Garden of Eden effect, where like I'm trying to run some faction stuff and I'm trying to do some one-to-one stuff, and it's just like, but at a reduced scale. Like I'm trying to follow B-Dub's advice and say no to the players and limit. Yeah. It's like, okay, you can do like one thing this week, and what's it going to be? Like I tried to compress it, and it felt just worse. It's like, this is not as good. This is like this is compromising on the principle. And so after finally we're just like, you know what, if all we have time and energy for right now is basically just like 4 hours a week to play the game, so we just went back to pause time, because it's like, listen, you needed a dunder. Sometimes things are so sometimes it's like, it's better to have something that is really a different category of gaming. And I think, like, I saw the back and forth between Jeffro and Alexander McCrease on and B-Dubs on the usability of Axe, and how Axe is really optimized for a monoparty pause time game. Like, that's really what it was designed for. That's what it optimally runs. And that is a different type. It is an entirely different experience than the sprawling Bro-SR campaign. And sometimes doing something completely different is easier than doing the same thing but worse.
What you're describing is exactly the state of Trollopolis when I joined. They had just had Brovenloft. Everything was crazy, and Jeffro was like, we're missing the point. We need to blow it up and go back to the basics and figure out what's going on. And like, the mood was shot. And the only thing I think, I'm going to sound horribly conceited by saying this, but the thing that I think got us over that hump was me joining as an absolute, just wide-eyed, just rube of a fan coming in and just being absolutely geeked out and excited about everything. And it brought a spark and a joy. And then like all the old heads, all the OGs brought me under their wing, and they had fun kind of schooling up the noob and explaining what was going on. And then the magic started happening again. But that, what you're talking about, is very real. When people are used to that level of player autonomy, and then you have to dial it back because it's destroying the DM. How do you deal with that disappointment?
So before before we get into that, can we pull up young Steve's comment?
Man,
it's kind of gotten away from us, but it's actually really interesting.
Is it this one?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I think he's right in some ways, because if it's not one of the activities that's clearly set out in the DMG, or if it's not directly tied to travel, which we can measure, there is a bit of hand waving or just, DM fiat where you're just kind of like it's a little bit of guesswork. And so I think, and touching on also what Night Danger was saying, I think that we need to like narrow in the focus a little bit. When we played in Jeffro's Traveler game, he gave us in the email, it was very clear. It's like, this is how you lay out your character. This is how much money you have. These are your orders. And if you don't send it in this format, don't send it. And I've actually kind of taken that methodology a lot, where it's like, if you want to do something with your time, I'm not going to allow you to cast every spell every single day, because literally that's all you're doing is just sitting around casting spells. And it becomes, I want to cast Wall of Thorns every day for 3 months until I've built an entire, parameter around my community. I'm like, okay, you just do that. If there's no interaction with other players, it happens. You just do it, whatever, hand wave it. You got it. It's done.
Yeah.
Now, where do you bump up against other players where something you're deciding to do is actually going to affect the campaign?
Now,
Because
so to counter that, if you hand wave things, the question, and you have hostile competing agents that have a significant amount of power or even a significant number of troops, like if you're starting to get into wargame territory, that kind of hand waving is deeply disruptive to the balance. And I don't mean balance in terms of like you're calculating so that they get down to their last hit point to live. I mean just that, if you just hand wave spell applications to the druids when they're casting Stone Shape to build up the walls of their village,
they can do it according to time. Like they can do it. So you just say it happens,
Yeah, well, but the thing is, the one thing is though, is that you do have to say to the player, you can only, like, basically it's on the player to do the math for how much they can do and how much like what the results of that are going to be. But you do actually have to, you have to keep track of all those little details, because that's what produces interesting logistics questions for wargaming. When you have,
and that's for the player.
Yeah,
I disagree.
When you have armies moving across the map, questions of which hex is that army in on which day matters. And it's one of those things where you look at that order and you might think that's never going to come into contact with another player, so it's irrelevant. So we're just going to hand wave it. But the thing is paying attention to those things which seem irrelevant is what produces the hand of fate pushing down on the scales and things overlapping in unexpected ways as the game plays out. Again, it's time consuming to execute, but it does produce a more satisfying structure.
Here's my take, and then I want to hear what Harmony had to say. Not everything that you hope to accomplish is your character is going to do. When you're not in session, you are not 100% in control of your character. I'm not going to role play your character talking to the maid at the tavern while he gets his drinks and that kind of stuff. So you as the DM can say, all right, tell me what you want to happen, and next week I'll tell you what of that you actually accomplished. Right. So you don't have to play the game at all times. But before you respond, I wanted to hear what Harmony was going to say.
Right. So what I do for that is I just have different channels in the Discord where just for me and every player, just to have kind of a record of the things they're doing. And I don't need to adjudicate it at all. And actually, I want to go back to some chat comments here. Wraith, I think he was not on my stream. He's on somebody else's, Dundermoose's stream, maybe. I'm not really sure.
Wraith
he had
was
an excellent comment here.
Bronstein that I played in the Night City one that Dorno ran.
Okay. Very cool, because he has an excellent comment. Excellent issues to bring up, but what it should incentivize is multiple referees being available to adjudicate results. This allows the game to run on auto during downtime. I totally agree with that. See, in my game, like I said, I have 12 players in my game. We meet 3 times a week. Not everybody comes to every session. It's like three to 5 or 6 people come per session, but we have 4 referees and 12 people, I think. I want to say 4. Yeah, 4. I might be missing someone. There might be 5, but I think 4. And that helps a lot, having more than one person that can adjudicate, because sometimes they can adjudicate it themselves if they like know the rules. Like if you can trust your players to like understand the rules to what they're doing, they can generally just do it and put a record of it. But I mean, if you have like multiple referees, they can just go to somebody else if I don't care enough. Do we have any other chat comments? Because like there've been
Yeah,
really insightful comments here.
I have
And-
one.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find it here from Young
Mhm.
Steve. That was relevant to my response to what Dundermoose said there.
This one?
No.
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 Okay.
It's someone said some. It might have been Young Steve. It was someone said something to the effect of, here it is. At 9:40 p.m.
Okay.
Towards the top, just above the $100 super chat. Homework and the incentive to abstract everything out of character. One of the things about I think how downtime generally gets handled. Yeah, right there. One of the things that I think comes into play with how downtime generally gets adjudicated is, so like Dundermoose is correct. You can't just let them be
Playing at all times.
Well, basically, or infallibly motivated workaholics on Adderall. Like you can't like
Yeah. You
there
gotta
are
heal.
well, and so the
And overcome the trauma of what happened in the
Yeah.
dungeon.
yeah. So how I was adjudicating faction orders in Jungleburg in that summer campaign was players would submit their orders to me. I would look at how they overlapped. The first thing I would do is just check and see, does anyone else's orders cause problems for this set of orders, right? Like does it one time I think the evil wizard tried to send a spy in and steal some gunpowder from the humans that were holding the city, and if I remember correctly, the humans had moved he moved where he was storing the gunpowder, and so the spy that got sent in just didn't know. And so, but those two orders were independent of each other, and it was only by reading everyone's orders and then reading everyone's orders a couple times over and then stewing on it, like going to bed, waking up the next morning, doing some homework, going to a lecture, and then sitting down to process the orders once everything's kind of integrated. So first thing is do players disrupt it? But then the other thing is the druid was always trying to use animal friendship to build up an army of domestic animals, right? Which
Squirrels attack.
Which of course then has me looking up the size, the square mile size of the swamp, and saying how many alligators live how many alligators per square mile live in the Everglades? Like that's like
a lot.
Yeah, and the answer is a lot.
Many.
The answer is
Many.
the answer is a lot, and I was definitely being probably being stingy with how many alligators I gave him, but
1d100 times 1d6.
yeah, well, and so I'm checking for random encounters. When he says I send something out to scout, I would quickly just roll 3-4 times based on the amount of time. Like, does a random encounter happen? And if a random encounter happens, does that animal die? And so again, when I say it's 15 to 20 hours, I was really digging in and making sure that probably only about half of the orders I received from players yielded desirable results for them on any given week. Right? There's always monkey wrenches disrupting things. There's always complications. There's always stuff that just doesn't work. The reaction table got more use during that campaign than almost any other item in the book. But the one thing is, if you don't want to devote that much time, you hand wave, you reduce it to a mechanism, like in Axe, where it's you have a certain number of tertiary activities per day. And what Young Steve says about it abstracts downtime is it starts to board gamify the experience of downtime. It turns the experience of interacting with the world. It takes it out of being a role-playing game, and
This chat is lit. I'm sorry.
Great. Takes you out of the role-playing game and into the board game, where it's I have this many research project cards that I can spend this turn, and it will move my complete research project progress bar up this much. And if I want to play a board game, I'll play a board game.
Right, that's less satisfying.
And so I think there's got to be. I have a solution, but I figure I'm dominating the conversation right now, so I'll pull back for a bit. I have thoughts on how to do not one-to-one massive faction orders, and it involves not pause time, and also not one-to-one time. So we'll get there, but I'll give people some chance to.
Real quick,
yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry. We have a super chat. Thank you so much from the Ultra American TTRPGer. He says, "What games besides D&D would you use for one-to-one as well?" Thank you so much for your support, Hunter. I really appreciate it. Anyway, not to pivot directly to this question, but it is a good one. So, and
I would
I'll go
try it
ahead
on all of them. I would try it on
Yeah.
all
yeah,
of them.
Like, why not?
So I've mostly run D&D. I've played a lot of RPGs, but I've mostly run D&D in my life. I'm a big believer in that there are certain philosophies in running a tabletop game that are really more important than the exact rule set you're using. And the philosophies that I look for are things like, are you trying to make a living world? Fog of war with multiple players. And I think that they're and I'm having trouble wording this because this is like a half-baked thought. I'm gonna be perfectly honest about that. But there are certain philosophies that I think mean more than the exact rule set you're running, even though some rule sets do support them more than others. So I don't know. What other games would you guys run with one-to-one? You said all of them.
Yeah,
give it a
think
try.
It's fun for everything. I think that, Call of Cthulhu for sure.
Really? Because I would say
yeah.
Call of Cthulhu would be an exception for me.
Well,
And-
if you're willing to have a lot more characters than you would be running in D&D, then yes, Call of Cthulhu, very cool for one-to-one.
Now, I've never run Call of Cthulhu. I've played Call of Cthulhu, but it seems like the investigation is the game.
Right.
So, like,
so you don't like
during
Call of
downtime-
Cthulhu, right? You're not a big fan, right?
So I'm not the right audience for it. I'm not a big fan of horror and tabletop. I don't know that it's a really bad game. I just think that I'm not a big fan of horror and tabletop. I can't do it well. I can't appreciate it well. Not my game. But go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I see Vampire in the chat. Yeah, I could see that. I've never played
those
Vampire.
guys
I
never
want to play
stopped.
Vampire. Yeah, they never stop.
LARPers never stopped at one-to-one time.
Anytime that you're trying to have like a little bit of complexity and developing your character beyond what happens at the table, you can use one-to-one.
You could do it with a Cyberpunk, I think, very easily. So much so that, like, in Cyberpunk, there is a every character has a special ability that is tied to their not class, but their archetype. Like, if you're a journalist or a med tech or whatever, and that special ability, your rank in that special ability directly correlates to a monthly income of how much money you get per month. It's like right there. It's like if you have like rank 7 in the Rocker Boy thing, then you're like signed to a decent label, and you earn X amount of money per month, and it has like hospital costs. So like it has like the skeleton of economics that could totally work with one-to-one time. I was just say I can think of one game. I can think of exactly one game that I wouldn't run in one-to-one because I ran it in 1-7. And it's the Ultraviolet Grasslands by Luca Reyes. It's a labor of love. He does all the art, all the writing, all the layout himself. It's very much like an auteur project, kind of a psychedelic science fantasy setting, D20, D&D rules basically. And the big thing about it is that it's kind of an Oregon Trail type game where you're going. The assumption of that your party is that you're a caravan and you're traveling across this huge psychedelic wasteland, and travel time is measured in weeks. It's everything is a minimum of 1 week away, and so it's like, well, we want to go here, and there's like 3 checkpoints on the map that we'll stop at on our way, but the round trip for that what we want to do is gonna take like 11 weeks of travel. Or 8 weeks of travel, plus a week or two spent there doing dungeon crawling or doing excavation or doing trade or whatever it is that you're doing. And so I ran a short-lived just because he had to move away and scheduling stuff came up. But for my godfather, where we were using the Ultraviolet Grasslands, where I'm just running for just him, and we used that 1 to 7, where 1 day equals 1 week. So he had basically, and we ran every other week. So he's like, and on any given week he has 12 weeks, and if he exceeds that, then any given session he has 12 weeks of time to work with, and if he exceeds that, then he's got to play another character. It was basically the scale of it. Or I see someone there commenting Pendragon. Yeah, actually,
Right.
Pendragon would be another example of something where 1-to-1 just doesn't work.
It has its own time scale. So
It has its
you
own
just-
time scale, but you could have it absolutely fixed.
Yeah, X Dude is mentioning seasons mechanics.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe not
Every session is
scale
1
well.
year, I think.
Yeah.
Like
Mm.
yeah.
I mean,
So
there's
some of the
definitely ones
problems.
that-
Oh,
Go on.
go ahead, Harmony. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk
No.
over you, sister.
No,
Uh,
please.
Some of the problems we've been talking about result when the players have space and time to do something during downtime, but I find it's often the opposite. It's often that in the session they traveled out, they got to the dungeon, they delved it for a day, it's a week back. Usually it's the opposite problem, that when you're done playing, their character is locked out. Like, we already know what you're doing this week. And have you guys hit time jail yet in your campaigns, and how did you break that to your players, and how did they respond? It's like, no, you can't play your favorite guy right now. We know what he's doing during this time. You need to roll up a new one who can be active while the other one's training, or while the other one's healing from almost being killed, or is in a
Right.
coma or whatever.
I braced them for it with Jungleberg. I basically told them that time jail. I explained how time jail would work and all that right on day 1, and had them each make 2 or 3 characters, and just like, it's like, and so what that did is we got a rotating stable going, where some people would say, "Oh, I'm gonna bring this character, or I'm gonna bring that character," and well, we're going to this area, so I want to bring my cleric because I think there's going to be skeletons there, and so you got that going on. But it was very much a sliding scale of engagement, where you had my brother, who he hated it. He hated time jail, and so he was like, I'm just gonna play the same guy, and I'm just gonna be really careful. Like, I'm just gonna be really careful to keep track of how much time I'm spending on stuff. And he played a fighter, so
you
it's
front
things like
loaded it.
spell
You
re-
prepped
yeah.
them. They
Oh,
knew
yeah.
it was coming, so then when it
And,
came, it wasn't a surprise.
The one thing that we did have to curb, initially, it's like, well, if you have multiple characters and we allow like hirelings and stuff, do you allow someone to run multiple characters in a single session? And
I see.
like it's like I have 2 player characters, and I want to bring them both because I think they'll both be useful. And initially we did that, and it was fine until the question of the division of loot came up. Because then it's like, well, is it 1 share per character? Because if that's the case, then 1 player,
I think,
then-
is more fair.
then the player is incentivized to bring as many guys as he can to maximize his own personal treasure, which is of course an out of character consideration, but people are flawed.
Yeah, you gotta like
And so you
box that behavior.
to minimize friction. We basically said you get 1 share per player, and if you bring multiple characters, it gets subdivided. And how that negotiation occurs in character is irrelevant and off screen.
Right.
Well, I'd say if they bring both of their characters, then they're both out in downtime, and the next session you can't play.
So
Right, because you chose
we
to
haven't
spend
even
them both
touched
on this
on,
session. But let's get to Scudderfer and Harmony. I want to hear about how you guys handled that that scenario.
I honestly, I am on the opposite side of where Night Danger is. My downtime stuff is very quick. It's punchy. I make them choose a set thing with a time that is attached to that activity. For the most part, it's only training. And I mean, you can do other activities, but if you want to, like, let's say I want to carouse. Well, that's a week of downtime that you're just I'm going to roll a couple of dice. You might get a couple rumors, really quick and easy. But for the most part, like, the players, we play every week. And they're usually not in time jail because unless if they're in training, because they want to play like their main character, and then they'll have like a backup character for spell train or for level training. But if they want to like carouse, or if they want to go to the fighting pits, like Harmony was saying, like, yeah, you can just tack on a week on the calendar. That's what you're doing this week. because, you know, like they're traveling or something like that. So I don't like to do like the noodly, like, you know, I'll look at how many hexes they're traveling. All right, so you arrive on this day. What do you want to do? You know, I roll any encounters on the way. Very quick and easy. But for the most part, I like to keep the game very confined into a like a barony, like a small area where they're going to bump into each other. And so unless if there's some action that's going to lead to them like smacking heads, I'm not really too interested in it, and I'm not going to give it a lot of my time. But that actually is my issue with 1-to-1 is.
Hey, wait, time out.
Often,
are you going to take us on a side or on another bunny trail before
this is
Harmony can
and
answer?
this is a big one. So let's come back to it.
All right. Put a pin in it. Harmony gets to
Yeah.
go, and then right back to Scott for Mike for your next evolution.
So here is the map for my game right now. You see like all these blips. This is different parties. I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different parties operating right now.
Are you
we just
breaking
go
the
to
fog of war right now?
No,
Okay.
no, not really. They should be good.
6
But,
parties.
we have 6
How do you
different parties, and
maintain
like
interest? Like, are
4
people feeling here
DMs.
equally about? Oh man, you are on another level, Harmony. This is awesome.
So we have 6 parties operating right now. Each one of these blips is a party. These 2 are kind of the same party. They go back and forth. We have characters that'll travel from one party to another, different things like that. So my players are used to having more than one character because some of them have characters in multiple parties, and some of them have like characters that will travel in between parties sometimes. But sometimes like I have a group that meets on Thursdays, but this week on Thursdays, like half of the group had something going on, and I had like 2 people from the normal group, and I was like, I don't know if I want to run with 2 people, and then like 2 other people from the other group jumped in. They're like, oh, there's room. Okay, great. And so they like each roll up like a level 1 character. They jump in, no problem. They just have the 2 people who are normally there on Thursdays and just 2 people that are normally there on Sundays coming in. And I mean, it worked just fine. Like my players have no problems rolling up a new character. It has never been an issue for us. People just like playing more than one thing.
Yeah, play more than one character.
We have 6 parties right now, or 5 or 6, depending on how you count it. But
I had a guy roll up 2 to start with, and his first was an assassin with 1 hit point, and his second was like this Chad paladin that like max, like he didn't, you know, he's a paladin, he's not a fighter, so he didn't have 1800, but he had like high strength, ton of hit points. And he started playing the assassin. He was thinking, well, this guy's gonna die. He's got 1 hit point, and I can't wait to play my good character. And like this dude's made it through so many scrapes and survived that he's like become attached to the the assassin. So it's interesting how that can happen. Any other thoughts on that? I think we well represented it before Scottifer takes us in another area.
Wait, just a very 2-second aside. Paladins don't get exceptional strength bonus. I thought it applied to all fighter types. So
I thought you had to be a fighter to get the
I read it as they would because they are a fighter subclass.
Yeah, I at the very least that's how I've always run it. So if I'm doing it
let
wrong,
us know
then,
in the comments.
Then may Macho Mandalf strike me dead.
Help us.
I know Macho knows the answer.
Yeah, it's. I would say definitely they're a fighter.
I'm correctable, but I'm gonna stick with it until someone shows me. But all right, let's get on it. If you haven't forgotten it yet, let's get.
No, I haven't. This is like the one issue that has come up for me for years because my campaign has been running. It's not stopped. Sometimes it pauses for a couple months and people will kind of say, okay, no, here's what I was doing. I was training some weapon proficiencies or something. Yeah. But that's the boring stuff, right? Like that's the stuff that like we can't spend too much energy on because like if you do, like you're going to sleep. But where there are convergences, where people are bumping into each other with 1-to-1 time, your armies are crossing the hex together. And if they are crossing the same hex on the same day, regardless of where they are on that hex, I say they meet. Because we're trying to push these interactions as much as possible, right? And 90% of the time, these like amazing story beats, I guess you could call it, I'm going to call it a story beat because it's natural language. when these people come together, or when the big bad evil guy is finally ready to do his thing, it's always on a Tuesday, like, and
Taco.
you know what I mean? Like, or it's like a Thursday, and like
Yeah.
everybody's busy with real life. Like we have jobs and we can't resolve it. And so it's like, well, let's have a call after work. It's like, I can't, like I got soccer, like I've got quiz night, whatever. And so what that means is that and while we're like so dedicated to the calendar, right? It's like we have to one day passes, right? But then we're still stuck doing the same thing where it's like, well, we have to retroactively go back 3 days and resolve this conflict, or we're going to push the clock ahead a little bit so we know what's going to happen here. And so my issue with one-to-one is that it you can't control time, right? It is an ever moving thing. And when the convergences happen, it's never convenient. And that makes people feel like they're being left out because maybe they can't engage with the activity at that time. And so I'm just like, well, what would you do? And then I have to roll it out myself, and I have to record everything so there's like fairness in the results. And it just, I mean, has that come up for you guys? It just feels like so unsatisfying when it's on a Tuesday and these armies are hitting each other.
I think this is a
answer
deeper
this.
principle, but I want to hear around before I start going.
Yeah. So I think one-to-one is a general rule of thumb for downtime. Now, I keep my game synced up with a calendar. However, if you meet on a Tuesday and the big bad is going to attack the town on a Thursday, that weekly meeting does not have to be on Tuesday in game. It can cover the whole week. It can cover multiple weeks, really. It's just going to lock out players until time catches up. But you are not covering the events that happen on Tuesday on your Tuesday game. You're covering the most interesting events that are happening that week. Yes. So if the big bad's coming on Thursday and you meet on Tuesday, well, you're covering Thursday. Easy.
Does that, what about Bronstein play? Because so I've been chatting in the back channels, and with Bronstein play, we have one player with multiple factions, right? Because he's got 2 different PCs and they're both doing their own thing, right? The assassin and the paladin. And for him to be able to make moves and like he wants to be able to like move things forward with his paladin, but over here his assassin is stuck in this engagement, locked up with this other player, and they have multiple PCs as well. It creates like this drag where the clock is still moving. What were you saying?
You got to get the 2 players together. Like the 2 players you said you have to get them together in the same room.
Yeah. It's really, really tough. That's the one challenge, especially since I've started doing more Bronstein stuff and less like one-to-one. Because like one-to-one, it is just something that's there in the background that's gonna like it's just a clock, right? But like when you're putting in like the big thing, right, the conflict, then the clock is very inconvenient but necessary. And so like that's a challenge I face more than I get like the natural resolution of like Bronstein play with one-to-one time. I'm actually bumping up against it, being like, all right, well, I know we're trying to stick with one-to-one here, but let's shake up the clock a little bit just to make it make sense. And there's a lot of let's make it make sense right now.
Real quick, I want to say thank you, Crafty Matt, so much for the $5. The day Bison graced your village was the greatest day of your life. For me, it was Tuesday. Thank you so much. But yeah, you can, I mean, if Bronstein is like the, if it's the focus of your campaign, then you're probably going to run into issues with timing if it's not like consistently respected. And also if you have players that are there like on different days and can't like meet up for certain. I don't know the answer to that. I really don't.
Neither do I.
But
Dunder does.
I think this touches on a deeper phenomenon that I see in the hobby, and it's a disgusting one. It is people. Okay, the one-to-one time is a tool to make your game easier, more fun, and better. And the things that are set up in 1E that are there like encumbrance and that kind of thing. They're there to create happenstances in the game and force you to make decisions that are interesting and fun. Everybody tends to get this weird, like, loyalty to the game and what's realistic in the game, as if there are these invisible watchers outside watching it, and they're going to throw your book down in disgust if there's a continuity error. But it's like, no, this is for us. This is for our players. It's what's for fun. And maybe nobody knows that the big bads thing is going to happen on Thursday. So you say it's happening on Tuesday because that's when we're playing. Like, it has to serve the game and what the campaign is doing and what the world is. So, like, 1-to-1 is not meant to be this pharisaical slavishness to a dusty old rule that stifles the oxygen for your game. It's meant to allow things to blossom and come about and hit each other that wouldn't otherwise. This is one of the things that Jeffro knew instinctively. Like, my first time playing with him, I had my little gnome, Foam the Gnome, and I was trying to get some income in the downtime because I was worried about upkeep and that kind of stuff. Our first foray into the dungeon was a disaster. We left this expensive snail shell in there because it was too big to carry out. We would have to go back for another ill-fated adventure to try and get that back. And so I start messaging him in the Discord. Okay, well, I'm going to go into this tavern and I'm going to tell the guy, hey, I'll solve your rat problem. And then I was going to go down to the sub-basement and I was going to, open a bag and cast I was going to use my Speak with Animals to cast suggestion to suggest all the rodents get into the bag. And it was just like, no, that's not working. No, that doesn't happen. No. And like I was starting to get frustrated because I was like, this is the Bro SR, right? This is what we're doing. And Jeffro just knew, like, this, everybody playing their own little mini game away from each other. I forget what B-Dubs calls it. He's got a hilarious, as he always does, a bun mot for
Dweeb farming.
Yes. What was that?
Or was it dweeb farming or farm?
Dweeb farming. Yeah, I was trying to dweeb.
No, it was farm dweebing. Farm
dweebing.
Yeah.
And Jeffro was like, no, the cool stuff's got to happen when we're together. And so he just instinctually knew that's not going to work. And it wasn't like a DM5. He actually was rolling for it. It was like, I had a chance, but he's like, it's too dark. They've got to be able to see you doing the gestures for it to work. You're not just gonna, because I thought I'll get paid for getting the rats out, and then I'll throw the bag of rats to my my burrow owl Lenny that I had recruited on my last trip. And we saw this again with Goldenrod. Goldenrod was in prison, and the rest of the in-person players were planning a jailbreak to get Goldenrod out. But the player just kept trying to pull on the levers of writing a novel to the DM, and I'm going to try this and I'm going to try that. And it's like, no, man, save it for game night. And that one actually did not end well. He flamed out and just took his ball and went home on the whole campaign. So
real quick,
what I'm trying to say is the 1-to-1 time works when it works. It has to serve the game, make it easier and not harder. It has to empower, and it has to make the DM light up and get ideas you wouldn't have otherwise. It shouldn't be a chore, because if it's a chore, it's going to chew on you, and sooner or later it's not going to be worth it. And you're going to have to make those decisions, right? And I've said my piece.
Totally agree. And Joel Peterson gave me $2 Canadian, which is almost real dollars. And he says
that's almost 15 American cents.
Right? Very well said, Dunder. And by the way, I totally endorse this. If you want to give me money to compliment Dunder, please. I think that is the best way to compliment Dunder.
I can't accept any money right now because I don't have enough subscribers. So
they should change that. Please go subscribe to Dunder.
I haven't sold out yet.
Subscribe to Dunder, guys.
Yeah.
He's so pure.
Honestly, he's the best. He's the best one of us. So, I think what you tapped into right there is interesting, because the way you describe, like, the 1-to-1 as like stifling, as like it's suffocating the oxygen out, because that was like the exact opposite of the problem that I had, which is that 1-to-1 time was like a blacksmith's bellows that's just like funneling huge amounts of oxygen and interest and energy into the campaign.
Player interest or DM interest?
Yes.
for me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Like it was just like I especially when we first started, I had players like guys who I knew for a fact had to be at work for 7 a.m. the next day, like texting me at 3 a.m. like ah! And at that point I'm like, put it in your orders and I'll get back to you on Saturday. It was
I would
like
be
very
pulling so much wife aggro if that happened.
oh no,
If we're
literally
lying
one
in
of
bed and I'm
no
like,
dude
and
one of the
she'd be like,
guys who
"Those
messaged
nerds
me
again.
one
Is
of the
that
guys
some
who
nerd
messaged
texting
me.
you about an elf? You should go to bed, doesn't matter."
No, my friend, one of my friends who was texting me at like 3 a.m. I went over to his house. We get together like once a month or 2 months to do a LAN party because turns out LAN parties didn't go away. You can just do it. You can just
do it.
You can just do things. But so we get together to play Factorio. I go over to his place and his wife looks at me and she says, "Give me my husband back. What have you done?" And I was like, she's like best friends with my wife, so they were like, it was very much like in jest, like, "Hey, what have you done, my husband?" And it's like, I'm like, listen, listen,
obsessed.
he just and it like it dominated my mind. Like I was like any moment that I wasn't thinking about my studies, I was thinking about the campaign. It was like just an all. It's because it's just so engaging, and it's like this is how people get addicted to World of Warcraft. Is you don't want to miss out. Any free available moment is an opportunity to invest more into the game and get more out of it. And so it really does just like stoke the fires to unsustainable temperatures.
And it sounds
Crafty,
like Mike
I've considered it for sure.
I think I'd like to wait, what did Crafty say?
He said, "I dragged my wife to a LAN party. She ended up being house mom."
Yeah. I haven't been to one of those since high school. We're playing Counter-Strike 1.6. That's how old I am.
Yeah,
All right.
Halo 1.
Yeah.
I'm the resident old guy in the group though, so.
All right. No.
I'm 40.
Oh, in your group? Okay.
In this group here, I'm 40,
No, dude.
so I win.
You are a
No,
spring chicken.
That's Thunder.
No, Dunder.
I am wizened. I am a prune of a human.
All right, chat. First one to guess Dunder Moose's age.
How old is Dunder?
Yeah,
I was
guess
thinking like 34.
who is Dunder Moose?
He's
How old
either-
is Dunder Moose?
How old is Dunder Moose?
He's
I think
either 22 or
Put it in the
48.
chat. Put it in the chat.
I think
It's either 22 or
Dunder
48.
I think Dunder is over 42,
No.
but over 42, but under 56. He's in that range.
Okay, if you're
He's not
older
a
than me, I'll say
teenager, so-
41. You're 41.
Moose years and Morris Loman. In
Oh yeah,
Moose
no,
years.
in Moose years. Yeah, how old are you in Moose years? That's a good point.
54.
Before
Oh
I
no.
don't think so.
Oh.
I was
Macho says,
way
"I'm never
off.
going on this show."
I don't know if he'll reveal. That's up to him.
Zach says 45. It's getting warmer. Mr. Blue is the closest yet with 48.
Yeah. Like I
No.
said, you're either 22 or 50.
Yeah.
Wow.
No.
Well, good job,
you know,
Dunder.
anyway.
Good job, man. You must put on the lotion daily.
Yeah, he takes care of himself.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
totally
Moritz
right.
Loman. That's right. 47. We have a
47.
winner, ladies and gentlemen.
Moritz Loman.
Oh.
He gotcha.
That is
Right.
amazing.
Anyway.
Good job.
Our
Okay.
resident-
Tangent.
Anyway, back on
tangent
topic.
aside. I had pulled up.
I'm glad we spent
It's
time
way
on
up. You
that.
don't
That
have
was
to.
really good.
You don't have to pull the comment if you're not inclined. Where was it? It was Driving and Dragons.
He had some good ones.
Where did it go? He was talking about Cyberpunk. He was saying that why he didn't think Cyberpunk was a good fit for
Yeah.
1-to-1 because your hot characters are going to spend months in the hospital recovering from injuries.
Yeah, I mean, like that's a part of it though. Like you
Yeah.
roll up a new character, they're doing that thing. You come back to that character. Same thing with Call
Okay,
of Cthulhu.
but here's the thing.
right?
This is
Like,
so this is where I'm going here. Here, Cyberpunk is very episodic and generally bad for 1-to-1 time. The game is set up for you to skip several months between adventures. So I feel like in the development, and I commented on this briefly on Twitter, in the development of these of our like the BroSR structure of gaming, you've got two ideas happening. The Bronstein and the one-to-one time, and I actually think that they exist in tension with each other from time to time.
Yes.
In that, like, for example, like when Sheffer ran Travelerstein, or when Crom ran Broser Diceless, it really seemed from reading the play reports, and it seemed from playing play reports of Travelstein, and from playing in Broser Diceless, that time and distance and location mattered very, very, very little. That it was a extremely low priority of like, well, where am I on the map and can I get there in time? It's like,
Yeah.
you say, I want to go talk to J Jumper Jameson, and then you're just there, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so that's very flexible because it facilitates the type of play that Bronstein is good at. And this is the case, obviously, with the original Bronstein, where you have a city where travel time is basically negligible. It's like, oh, I'm
Didn't
good.
happen. Yeah.
Right? It's
Everybody
like
can just talk.
it's a small town. Anyone can get anywhere within like an hour or two at most. Like, it's just not relevant. It's not relevant to track time. And so you're just trying to focus on the points of interesting contact.
Unless you give everyone like sending stones or an Ansible or something that can
Yeah,
overcome
unless
The trump cards from Amber is how we did it.
unless you
Yeah.
pull a castle amber and like arbitrarily work around that, right? And
gotta
so
We have a magic bubble.
yeah. So the contrast there with when he says it would be bad to skip several months, and the stock answer, if you're a one-to-one time purist, is, well, you'll just play a different character for several months. Except, as the Broasar, as we have adopted the Bronstein more and more and more, the campaigns and the games are getting shorter.
Yes.
Most
I've
games don't last near, like, no one, like Vomitron, he ran what, like 1,200 some sessions?
Yeah, huge.
Like,
Wow.
it's that sort of really long running campaign isn't happening the more that we lean into a focus on Bronstein and convergence. The more that you only care about the interesting stuff, the less time, the less longevity these campaigns have. And so it doesn't work as a solution to say, it's like, oh, I want to do a one-to-one Bronstein in Cyberpunk, and if my character gets injured and I'm in the hospital for 6 months, it doesn't work as a solution to say, well, you'll just play another character for 6 months, because in 6 months, in one-to-one time, that game's not going to exist, right? Like, it's just not going to. It's not going to happen.
If you're playing Bronstein, you're absolutely correct.
Exactly. If you're leaning into Bronstein principles, if you're doing total nonstop Bronstein, you're setting yourself up, like, because the thing is that it's like the excitement and the interesting stuff, the convergence that makes Bronsteins exciting and dynamic, is it's like icing on cake. It's the nice part. But if you do all icing, the higher the ratio of icing is on the cake, the fewer slices you can have and the less time you can spend enjoying it, right? Like, it's,
And there's usually only like a last man standing. Anyway,
well, it's like, or imagine
right?
like an there was an action
Thunder.
movie with
Sorry
Jason
about
Statham.
that, guys.
There's an action movie with Jason Statham from a couple years ago, Crank, where the premise is that he has a bomb attached to his heart that will go off if his heart rate drops below like 100 and some BPM. And so he has to figure out a way to disarm the bomb or disarm the poison or whatever, while keeping his heart rate up at all times. So he's like driving his car really fast and slapping himself in the face and taking cocaine and like just like go, go, go. And once he realizes that he has to do this, the movie doesn't slow down at any point. It stays like that high intensity for
Sounds
the entire length of the
exhausting.
movie. And the movie is mercifully only 90 minutes, right? And if it was like a 2-hour movie or like a 2.5-hour movie, it would be completely unsustainable, right? And so that's my one thing that I've like pushed back a bit with the total nonstop Bronstein stuff, is if you want a game to be sustainable, you can't disregard the diffusion.
Can I
And
push back?
I want
wait.
because I saw Harmony's
I'll-
face
I'll-
when you started saying that.
yeah, you
I
don't
can-
want to simply say no. That's not relevant. That doesn't drive conflict. That's not moving towards some convergence. Like,
What?
you can't just say that to everything, because it means that you're constantly pushing towards a greater level of intensity. Sometimes characters have to do stuff that's not relevant to conflict. Characters have to do things that don't drive the plot forward.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
To give the game time, to give the game room to breathe, so that so that the game doesn't flame out.
Yeah.
Harmony's turn.
So, right. So, I kind of want to talk about, and kind of in relation to what you said, what happened with my game when I switched to one-to-one time. This was a brand new game. I started up with one-to-one time in February, I believe is when it started. And it went from meeting once a week to twice a week and now 3 times a week. It's because we keep getting more DMs, we keep getting more players. And we've lost, of the original players, we've lost 1 of the 6 original players who had life stuff happen, but she wanted to stay in. She couldn't, unfortunately. And we've gained more and more players. And I've kind of been leaning into the Bronstein stuff more. As we go, like I've just been leaning into like the God Bronstein happening above the table as the players are doing their thing down like in session. And I've noticed it's added excitement and longevity for us because what the biggest change in this campaign and previous campaigns I've run is the focus of the game. Because if you have a consistent timekeeping with more than one party operating in the world, then suddenly there are no main characters. Every player character is just a player character. They're not the main characters. They're not the focus of the game. The world is the focus of the game. And the player characters exist to change the world. And it doesn't matter how tense things get and how many player characters die, and if we have a last man standing situation, which we won't, by the way, because do you know how many player characters I currently have operating in this world? I'm going to count them real quick. It's something like 30.
Yeah, with 6 parties, right? Like
5 parties.
5 parties.
Nope, 6. Right, 6 parties.
5.5.
Right. It's something like 30.
One party's all halflings.
Some of them I have consistent downtime orders for, and some of them are just kind of like, all right, he's just gonna vibe in this city and rest, and maybe learn a skill over the next 6 weeks, and when we get back there, he'll maybe have something new, So I don't have consistent downtime orders for all of them, but the focus is no longer on the party. With something like that, there are no main characters. Your player character is your ability to interact with the world, as well as your god in my game. But like that's a whole different thing that has nothing to do with timekeeping.
Because you started with the Bronstein and it led into right.
Yes, I did.
Kind of like Bradford did with his.
Oh, did he do that too? Oh, I want.
He didn't use a Godstein, but he had
he did a race to the tower.
Yeah, the race to the tower.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I would love to hear about his campaign. I'll have to
like
read his blog. I've read some of his blog articles, but I haven't read about his campaign. But
I have experienced both of what you're talking about. As far as the Harmony thing, I know your campaign is still going after having Bronstein play. I know Trilopulus is still going after Macho ran the whole thing that went down in the Bandit Mountains, and but my experience from what I've played has been closer to what Night Danger's talking about. And that's probably my own fault as a player. FOMO has saw me throw my hat in the ring again and again. I have a lot of hats. I have felt like we do this bright, beautiful, crazy thing, and then it's over. And then I'm on to the next one. Right, so I did Night City with Doranal. I did Gangbusters. I'm in Lancer with Gelatinous Rube, and so part of it is just me joining multiple groups. I don't know if they go on afterwards, but I think for a lot of them, it wasn't about an ongoing campaign, but it was the summer of Steen. Everybody wanted to play with these new ideas, and so everyone just wanted to run a Bronstein. So I don't know if the commitment was there from the get-go, but I can definitely see that like it gets interest, things gel, and then these amazing crises and conflict points happens, and then it feels like it's over and you can calm down for a bit. And so I guess I agree with both of you because that's been my lived experience.
Where I was building to is I'm so sorry. Do you have something there?
Yes, but you can go.
Okay. I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily that the games are getting shorter. I don't actually see that as an inherently bad thing. I just see it as a different activity. So when I see, when we were talking about total nonstop Bronstein, and there was a lot of arguing and yelling back and forth about define your terms, right? Like this, all of this squabbling was happening. The thing that confused me was the idea that any character action that does not directly lead to or push towards a converging conflict is to be either actively blocked by the GM or simply discouraged, or because you're trying to always push into the interesting stuff. And this,
or even if not discouraged or blocked, other things will be chosen over it.
Yeah, exactly. Like the DM just won't give time to that, right? And Bradford said, rate 1039, I keep pointing people to real history for a reason. Major turns of events do take a long time to set up, play out, and then resolve conclusively, right? Like these things, they to have these big, exciting convergences actually be meaningful and not simply dramatic like a soap opera. Like a soap opera is dramatic because they just pull and twists it. They're like, oh, actually, it was the long lost brother. And there's all these threads that you can't keep track of. And it's exciting in the moment, but then you look back on it and you're like, that was actually really dumb, right? Like that was kind of silly. Whereas something that builds up for a really long time and all these threads very intentionally start gradually overlapping, and then that resolution is more satisfying, but it takes longer. And so you invite the comparison of a legacy TV show like Breaking Bad versus a movie, like the idea of something that goes for a long time and like takes the time to really build to these conclusions, or something that just gets to the point, gives you just the good stuff, 90 minutes, maybe 120 if it's really good. And I'm a movie guy. I don't like television. I don't like long-running series. And so the fact that the games have gotten shorter is, I think, potentially a feature, but it's a feature that conflicts with the assumptions of one-to-one time. If I want to simply have a 6 to 15 session game that is really bombastic and exciting and has lots going on, and then it ends, and then we do something else, we do another, do a different thing, change systems, change settings. That, I think, is much closer to how I enjoy playing RPGs than locking in for 40 years with Rick Stump. It's like, it's that...
I feel like I need to play with Rick Stump.
It's like it is a total... it's just, I think it's a different mindset. It's a different type of activity. And
I'm just worried about what Rube would do to my mustache if I played with Rick Stump.
There's I think you can invite a comparison between history and between appendix and fiction. In that I think the Bronstein is closer to appendix and fiction than it is to history. One-to-one time will give you those big, long-running, overlapping threads that eventually converge. But a Bronstein mindset, it's like you get to the start of a Conan story, and he's been riding with the Cossacks for the last 8 months and has made himself an important figure, and now there's a wizard or whatever. Did you take any time to track what Conan was doing for the last 8 months, how he got to those Cossacks? No, who cares, right? You get right to the action. And so I think the idea of episodic gaming, of short stories, or those slim little novellas that you see in a lot of good fantasy paperback sections, is we get in, we identify a couple problems, we get our characters, we play out what happens, and then we move on. And then those same characters might reappear in other stories, in other sessions, in other Bronsteins later. They might appear older, they might appear younger, you can kind of play around with it. But the actual time spent between Convergence A and Convergence B is, not only is it hand-waved, it's not even discussed. It's just credits roll on the Bronstein, and then next time you guys get together, it's yeah, you're rolling into town. It's how much time has it been since last time? And the answer is, who cares?
So let me make sure I'm following you. Let me make sure I'm picking up what you're putting down. You're saying normal campaign, 1-to-1 time, when the Bronstein comes in, whether it's a session Bronstein or a a few weeks of play by post or whatever, because of the needs of the Bronstein, maybe we relax some of the one-to-one stuff. You may have move faster than you would have so that you can have conversations you wouldn't otherwise. So the question becomes, how do we DM that transition period when it goes back, when the one-to-one time snaps back into? Is it just like a session where it's like it gets all wiggly for a minute and then it snaps back to the calendar? Or are you saying once the Bronstein happens, you can say, well, we'll pick it up later and it doesn't matter how much time has gone by?
I think no. More accurately, I'm describing. I think that it's that if you adhere to either principle like fully and to the maximum utility that you can get out of it, you will necessarily diminish the other. Which is to say that if you want to get the maximum benefit of one-to-one time, you have to necessarily restrict how much crazy convergence and madness happens if you're integrating Bronstein angles. You have to say no. You have to restrict actions, right? Because you have to try and keep things moderately stable, and you have to keep track of these threads and give them time to build and fluctuate. Whereas if you're just gonna lean into, I want to get to the good bits, I want to get to the exciting stuff, I want all killer no filler, right? If that's what you're going for, it's trying to strictly adhere to one-to-one time pushes up against that. And
you're arguing against the diminution of diffusion. You're saying diffusion has its place.
If you want to have a long campaign. If you want to have a long campaign. If you don't mind having short campaigns, then who cares if diffusion gets diminished? But it's one of those things where you can't have everything. I think we have to balance these things.
I understand what you're saying. I think one-to-one timekeeping is for a game where the world matters, where you want a living world. And if you just want to have a Bronstein with like you said, all action, just convergence after convergence, then one-to-one time's not gonna, I don't think it's going to add anything to your game. If you want a 6 session long game, which is not the same thing as what I want, but I understand. This is why I like having you on, because you have a very different experience running games and a very different type of game you like. But I mean, if you're wanting to just have okay, I wasn't going to say brain damage, but
no, but I did. That makes it okay.
I love this
but
group.
If you want a short campaign and you don't care about the world around it, and you're not looking at how your little village changes over time, and you're just looking at the group dynamics, then I don't think one-to-one time is going to add anything to your game. I think one-to-one time is for a living world that you want to see change over time in response to how the players interact with the world. So I'm not sure that I don't know what type of timekeeping you use for a 6 session long campaign, because my campaigns last years, but brag. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't think one-to-one is particularly important in that circumstance.
No,
you guys are kind of arguing two sides of the same coin, it sounds like.
Well, no, this is the thing, is I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I'm saying that they produce young Steve has just been cooking in the chat here. 1047. I remain convinced, after coming to this realization months ago, that Bronsteins are not role-playing games. They are a fundamentally different but related thing. And this is really what I'm getting at, is that if you lean into the total nonstop Bronstein, you're going to get different results than if you lean really hard into the one-to-one time. And we saw this when people started talking about total nonstop Bronstein, where people like Fluid the Druid pushed back on the idea of the total nonstop Bronstein, because he's like, no, the little details matter. These slow, kind of uninteresting logistical questions, they matter because you have to give them time to build. You have to give them time to gain momentum and to build relevance. You can't just eschew little details. You have to give them space to breathe and grow. And so for him, the idea of always pushing towards conflict it like, how to put this, it incentivizes a high time preference player and disincentivizes a low time preference player. And so they're it's not that they're I think either one is actually superior. It's that I think that they're actually completely different activities. I think that I think running a play by post total nonstop Bronstein for 6 weeks is an entirely different activity than having an ongoing map based RPG / wargame campaign. They're
Certainly.
they're so different that it's almost not worth comparing them, other than to crib ideas from one and like bleed them into the other back and forth.
I see it. Yeah, I see it
I
like a
certainly
left
agree with
foot,
that.
right foot walk. I see it like breathing in and breathing out. But we haven't heard from Mike in a bit.
Scudder for Mike. Yeah.
I don't know if I disagree. I think that my experience is having, like, I'm still in a long running campaign that we're battling things out. The players have kind of settled into trying to team up more and lean less into fighting each other. And so I'm going to let them play what they want to play. And as of 2 weeks ago, when our last session happened, because we have a lot of people who are traveling right now, they're all buddy right now. And they've gotten into a habit. They think that, like, so they know how to game it, where, like, if they create a new party, they're like, we're going to give ourselves an adventuring name. And now we're best friends and we're all in the same adventuring party and we're the Bugmen. And they will cause problems for their other parties. But as far as like the people who are playing at the table with those characters at the time, they're all about protecting each other and looking out for each other. And like, they're doing the backstory thing. I told them that if they want to send me a backstory, they need to do the push-ups. They're sending me the push-ups.
Right
they're
on,
like, this
man.
is my best friend. And, and they're like, this is my best friend. So,
Nice.
like they're going to
You
do
may
what they
be a
want to do.
nerd, but you will be strong.
You're going to be a strong one. I'm going to let them play the game that they want to play. Now, as the dungeon master, I'm looking for ways to like create NPC nudges to say, hey guys, maybe you want to fight. But I feel like now I'm kind of moving into a different conversation than one-to-one time. The core of one-to-one and why my campaign is still going and still strong is because it slows the game down. And I think that's what Night Danger's saying, is that, when you're playing one-to-one, it's still, everything's kind of moving and it can be fast, but when you're looking at a grand scheme of things, it's a slower campaign where your players' choices matter and they will be more powerful. The individual PC will be more powerful than in a stop time game because they can train spells and actually have time for that because they're not frozen in the dungeon. They will have extra proficiencies because they spent the gold to train those things.
Yeah.
And so if you really want to invest in a forever game, which is what I want to play. I do like a Bronstein though. It's fun, but it's not a forever game. A forever game is what I want to play and what I want to run.
Yeah.
I'm going to
have to hop off fairly soon.
We're gonna wind down, I believe, soon.
If I could tie a final little thought there, is that after initial hesitancy of seeing how a potential, like how your Bronstein conflicts potentially with the one-to-one time if pushed to its logical conclusion, I think once I just accepted that they're in conflict, it became much easier to accept the idea of taking the Bronstein to its logical conclusion, which is to say, if I just say, I'm not going to get 9 years and 1,700 sessions out of this game, it's not going to happen, then I'm able to embrace the strengths of the Bronstein, which obviously Wesley ran it as effectively like a one-shot, like a singular event, right?
Here for a good time, not for a long time.
Exactly. I'm able to fully embrace the strengths of the medium in a way that would be difficult if I was constantly trying to make sure that I didn't completely blow up the game world that I'm trying to have like a forever game in. And by I think letting the Bronstein be, as young Steve said, its own thing, it's something that we can steal ideas for and take principles from and integrate into an ongoing campaign. But in its pure, complete, undiluted state, it really does need to I think it needs to stand alone. And that when you let it stand alone, you get things like Bros or Diceless, right? Which was technically on a 1-to-1 time, but the timekeeping never came up. Like basically never came up.
I
Right.
wish we had time for me to tell you what I'm doing in my game to make like essentially use Bronstein dynamics and just stretch it out forever. You know what? We do have time. I just decided.
Yeah. Please do say it.
No, what I have them do is every month I have one god can do like a divine action in the world, like divine intervention level. They can move a mountain, or they can change terrain. They can bless someone. They can curse a whole race of people if they want. Every month, one of them gets to, but we don't take turns because that would be boring. Instead, they vote. They each have one vote that they make secretly every month. They can buy another with a resource, but no one knows if they did or not. And so and they have like this resource that they can freely exchange between each other. So I have like people paying each other for votes. I had like a shadow campaign happening one month. I'm actually afraid to say on Twitter what happened this month because, man, there was going to be such a contentious election with my players. And I know elections aren't like a Bronstein thing, but man, they lean into the dynamics. It has created factions, right? But this month, they were gonna have such a contentious election. And then, oh God, no one will ever take me seriously again if I say what won.
Do it.
A player promised Mecha Santa. The god of craft said, if I win this month, my god action is going to be to create Mecha Santa. And everyone was like, yes! And then he
Wait, but will it be
won.
the Futurama bit?
Oh, I know. He won with like 9
Rock
out of
on.
13 votes or something ridiculous.
That's wonderful.
So oh gosh, it was like not even close, like to the point where I at first was like, I'm not gonna do anything about this because he's not gonna win because he's already won this recently and they're not gonna vote for
That's
the
how
same
Trump
guy
got
twice.
in the first
I'm not
time.
even worried about it. It's not gonna happen. And then like everyone slowly was like, actually, we're going to vote for Mecha Santa. And I don't know if it was like, we want Mecha Santa or will Harmony allow us
Let
to
us have it.
All you need is a meme and a dream, baby.
Well, now I have to figure. Yeah, right. Anyway, so they have basically how I've done it is they have a monthly winner basically to their and I'm not going to say that's a Bronstein, but it definitely has dynamics because there are good and evil gods competing for this. And normally I get really interesting Bronstein-like results, right? This month, just got Mecha Santa, but
Mecha Santa is interesting and exciting.
That is pretty good.
Yeah, but you understand if I share this on Twitter, it's going to be 1-to-1 time doesn't work because Harmony allowed Mecha Santa. It inevitably ends in
It's
Muppets
just
or
another
Mecha Santa.
Muppet. Well, that's a good point you bring
Just
up.
rock
Harmony.
images of Mecha
This is
Santa.
my Muppets. This is
Yeah.
my Muppet moment.
I do want to say the Broasar has a united front for the most part. It got a little rocky for a bit, but on Twitter we have a united front because we have a lot of ankle biters. There are people looking for that Mecha Santa to jump on it and say, ha, see, you guys are wrong about everything, right? But the thing I love about this show and the thing I love about the Bros is that it is very much a laboratory where we are playing with some powerful stuff. And the things that we know play into it, but there is to a certain degree still an amount of experimentation going on where we are playing with this stuff, and sometimes it's like radiation, sometimes it burns us, sometimes it powers flying cars, right? So it's exciting time. It's wonderful to be in this stuff. I wish we didn't have to build the city with the bricks and the trowels in one hand and our short swords in the other to protect from attack, because there's always the naysayers, there's always the ankle biters. But it is coming on a show like this and being able to have the conversations that usually happen in the back channels out here in the open, so you guys can see, hey, there's something about this. These guys are playing in a way that's different than what we've played for 40 years. Get curious about it. Don't feel bad if you didn't do this 40 and you feel like, oh, maybe I should have and I have less worth because I didn't play this way. I don't know how. I'm just assuming that's how the pride gets in the way. Get curious, play with these ideas, try them for yourself, and blog the receipts so that nobody can argue with you. So you can say, here's what happened when I tried it at my table. So I feel really blessed and lucky to be on this show with these guys and to be paying attention at this time in gaming history. So that's my bit.
And I think
Well
we are
said.
winding down now. That was a beautiful speech, Dunder.
Okay.
Do you guys have any last thoughts? And also, please, again, plug your channels, plug your Twitter, do whatever. Mike.
Scudder for _Mike at YouTube. I vote for Dunder to win this month's Scott election. That was a killer speech. You got me, because on Twitter right now there are a lot of ankle biters. I thought we won the war, honestly. Like, I was kind of at a point where I was just like, it's universally accepted that so many different things that we try they're fun, and you're gonna have a good time if you do these things. And people were, like, not canceling YouTubers for having Jeffro on. So I was like, okay, we've won. And then last week, I'm just scrolling, seeing all these like ankle biters. I'm just like, where do you guys get the energy to start over and try to fight with these guys again and again? Because it's like, just go back last year and read what we did. We already had this conversation. Like,
they're
I have nothing but respect to you guys.
Playing their own Bronstein and proving our points.
Nobody ever played this way. We always played this way. It's like, so yeah, I vote for Dunder. If you want to see conversations about one-to-one time, you can check me out on YouTube. Mostly I do solo play videos. I'm trying a bunch of different systems right now. The next one is coming soon, guys. I know it's been a while. I miss playing. So subscribe over there if you haven't.
All right. Dunder Moose, do you want to go again? Or I feel like your speech was good. But
thanks. Yeah, I got nothing better than that. Let's just end it there for me.
Subscribe to Dunder Moose. Get him to where he can accept super chats. I don't know what that threshold is, but subscribe.
No,
to
then
him.
I'll sell out.
Guys.
Then I'll sell out.
He will. Oh, we want sold out Dunder Moose. That's fine. You'll sell out, and then you'll have people dropping $100 super chats. What then? Night Danger.
I said at the beginning of the stream that I don't have any ongoing projects at the moment, but I technically do, in that I've been chasing the white whale of making investigative games work and not be railroads. I do have a YouTube channel over here, a Night Danger RPG. Admittedly, I haven't posted in a while because haven't had a tobacco budget, and I generally film outdoors while smoking. So
there's always string cheese.
But now it's flu season and more teachers are getting sick, and so I'm getting more substitute work. So we're getting more. So the illness is. So I'm hoping to have some stuff going up there. I'm over on Twitter with Night Danger, and I'm hoping. I'd say if I was to tease anything, I'd say Halloween 2025, I'm hoping to release something that is pertaining both to low stakes, small scale Bronstein mechanics and investigative RPGs. Tentative title Greenbelt.
I have not seen anybody talking about the stuff you are when it comes to the theory about how do you run an investigation as an RPG. You guys should watch.
It's because Call of Cthulhu gave bad advice in the 80s and no one questioned it once. Yep. And the people who think they're questioning it are actually simply putting on a silly hat and then giving the same advice. It's terrible. It's like genuinely awful.
And that's my shtick.
And I want to fix it. So stay tuned for that.
I'm curious about that, man.
If you want to subscribe and see me post once every month and a half, then by all means. I'm more than happy to sell out. Like I don't mind.
Right on.
That's about where I am. I haven't posted a whole lot on my YouTube lately. Hoping to do more once the year is over. I'm running into some holiday stuff right now. But thank you guys so much for sticking around. I'm planning to release full rules for how I did the player Godstein, hopefully by Christmas, but this is getting a little bit dicey. There's a little bit more into it here, but it should be soon. I am hoping, pushing for December. It will be on DriveThruRPG when it is released. Anyway, thank you guys so much for sticking around. Dundermoose, Scudder Mike, Night Danger, thank you guys for being here. And Merry Christmas, everyone. You all have a wonderful new year.